A whistleblower brings concerns to Congress about your security on social media. The president makes a big recommitment to fight cancer, and a pipeline to transfer carbon dioxide from Iowa to Illinois generates concerns for environmentalists. We'll talk about that this morning with a couple of former Iowa State representatives, Democrat Alicia Gaiman and Republican David Milch. Great to see you both in person.
It's good to be here.
It's been a while. Let's start with the carbon dioxide pipeline. This has implications for Iowa and Illinois. A few news outlets are covering this. Among them, public radio operated by Bradley and Illinois State Universities. They report a company called Wolf Carbon Solutions intends to build a pipeline that would move as much as 12 million tons of carbon dioxide a year from Cedar Rapids and Clinton, Iowa to Decatur, Illinois. Now, the transfer starts at an ethanol refinery and will wind up in a sequestration site 3/4 deep into the ground as part of a saline rock formation. We got this video from our sister station in South Dakota, provided by Summit Carbon Solutions, related to a different pipeline project. The theory is CO2 gets trapped into the mixture and reduces carbon emissions into the atmosphere. Supporters call it a positive way to address climate change. Critics say there's no proof it works and only reinforces the fossil fuel industry. There are also some risks. Breaking a pipeline can be hard to detect. It actually happened in Mississippi a couple of years ago, where a community needed to be evacuated and 45 people wound up hospitalized. The Center Square reports 3 carbon capture pipelines are actually in the works for Iowa. I guess, how do you see the cost and benefit analysis? Can this work in conjunction with green energy projects, Alicia?
Well, I personally think that, everything's on the table at this point. I mean, it's clear from every resounding corner of everywhere that climate change is happening and we have to act now. We should have been acting quite aggressively several years ago. But I think that this is a potential start. I, quite frankly, am new to the technology, so I don't have a lot of, passion one way or the other, but I definitely think leaving it on the table. I would raise 2 concerns, though, with just overall of pipelining, and that is how you acquired the land for the pipelines and running that. We always run into the problem of eminent domain in Iowa.
And that is being raised in some of these cases.
And that is definitely a concern for a lot of people in our state. And then the other thing is, as you kind of alluded to, is the cost of the risk of leaks, and what does that look like, and how does that transpire, especially in central Iowa. We have struggled with water quality, and those are issues that we want to make sure that we're not adding to or compounding in the end.
And David, your take? Climate activists, though, do not like this idea, though. They think it is harmful.
No, some do. Some do. But most don't, because they think it's the savior, so to speak, of fossil fuel, and they don't want anything to enhance the efficacy of fossil fuel. And I have to disagree with them. I think fossil fuel is going to be around for a while, and so, like you say, it's a start. This is going to displace 2.6 million vehicles on the road each year, from the sources I've been reading, and that's a significant dent in air pollution. So they ought to be for it. And I know the Iowa Corn Growers Association is for it. I don't know where the Farm Bureau is, because it helps farmers, and it
helps ethanol industry too.
Well, yeah, it helps ethanol industry. It's probably, again, the savior of the ethanol industry, because they need someplace to put the CO2, and this is the best place for it.
All right, we'll see how that shakes out for sure. This week, President Joe Biden took a bold stance to try to fight cancer by pushing a plan to cut the cancer death rate in half over the next 25 years. A law enacted 6 years ago allocated almost $2 billion for cancer research over 7 years, so that is close to running its course. The president put a lot of focus on Advanced Research Projects Agency for Health and announced its first director. The agency is designed to utilize similar methods that help the Pentagon and intelligence community. The president is depending on the private sector to contribute heavily in this, and he addressed hope in a new blood diagnostic study that researchers hope can identify different forms of the disease in one single blood test. He's also taking some executive action to develop advanced biotechnology. I find it hard to believe anyone is going to criticize the president for trying to fight cancer. Surely it's personal to him. His son died of the disease. The policy being dubbed the cancer moonshot, established under the Obama administration. I guess, how much is this wishful thinking? Is it a political rallying point to some extent? Does it need more money behind it, more than what the government can provide or already has provided, David?
Well, I thought it was a publicity stunt, because he made the announcements
coinciding with the JFK moonshot.
Yeah, the JFK moonshot speech, right? So, because we've been investing a lot of billions and millions of dollars into cancer research in the past few years. I think I read where there's 70 research projects undergoing now, 70 different programs generating 250 research projects at the current time. Started as a result of the 2016 initiative. I don't think this is anything new. Certainly, anything that can help win the battle against cancer, though, is worth looking at.
Absolutely. Alicia, your take on, is this more political play than actual action?
Well, I think definitely, cancer affects people across party lines. It doesn't matter if you're Democrat, Independent, or Republican.
Rich, poor, black, white, whatever religion.
Exactly.
Yes.
Everybody is impacted in some way, shape, or form with cancer throughout their lifetime, be it friend or family member or themselves directly. And I think it's definitely, we have the technology there, and with innovations that we're making in immunotherapy advancements and other types of medical advancements, I think the technology is starting to get to a place where we could really make some aggressive leaps.
More public sector or more private sector?
I definitely would like to see the investment more on the private sector side. I worked as a federal lobbyist actually for a national nonprofit organization that worked for immunotherapy disease, and I don't necessarily have a fond take on somehow how that research money is spent, but I do think that there's a lot of good development happening. We just want to make sure that it's balanced and that it's done without eyes of looking at what the corporate payout is going to be at the end. I think we want it to be done in a very academic and tight setting.
Let's finish with one topic with the little time we have left. It's an issue I bring up every so often. Cybersecurity. Former security chief for Twitter testified before Congress this week as a whistleblower that the social media giant is very weak on cyber defense. It puts its users at risk of hackers, thieves, and spies. He claims Twitter executives ignore the vulnerability. It's one thing to single out Twitter, but this is a problem for every industry because we are so dependent on the internet. This does sound the alarm, though, for big tech specifically, as Congress has been very slow to act despite calls to do otherwise and calls for regulation or enforcing antitrust laws when it comes to big tech specifically. An argument can be made that most members of Congress really don't understand this level of technology. The change is extremely fast. What can federal lawmakers actually do than just express frustration or criticism, which is what I often hear from lawmakers, Alicia?
Well, I definitely think there's some room for some more regulation, and I think unfortunately crimes and oversight tends to lag behind technology, and I think my counterpart here would probably agree with that, having time in the legislature. It seems like we're always playing catch up as things evolve, but I don't think that just because they're evolving faster than legislation and policy can keep up that you kind of turn a blind eye. I think there's some huge security concerns with Twitter. I think who's tracking our information, who has that, I think that's a fundamental right to privacy and for our individual American, and they need to have that information really readily available and be very clear and understanding when they're using these platforms, how they're being utilized, how they're being tracked, and where that information is going. And it needs to be in a very readable, user-friendly way, not necessarily the 2-point font in the in the scrolling do you agree section that you kind of click to move on to the next page.
David, it's not just Twitter though either, but can lawmakers do more than just the talk?
Yes, they can put some teeth into their regulations and start penalizing these companies for these breaches, either through fines or private lawsuits. They need to be held accountable for these breaches. I mean, I read the testimony of this whistleblower. It's just shocking what's going on in these tech companies, and they're doing very little about it. They need some teeth in the regulations, and they need the FTC, the Federal Trade Commission, is responsible for the enforcement of those regulations. They need to get on the ball, or heads should roll.
And we certainly have seen more from the European Union on this issue as well. David Milledge, Alicia Gaiman, thank you both for conversations. Always great to see you in person again, too.